Okay, gentlemen, welcome back. This is part 2 of 4 parts of LAMBDA MAN training. This is part 2, our past or getting real. All right, so if we go back to our outline earlier today, this is with the real LAMBDA Man, please stand up. So far we've discussed the problem that men face in today's society. We've mostly communicated that through a video. And I think the video speaks for itself. I don't need to add much commentary. I do suggest that you keep this link handy and watch that video, that problem portion of this presentation of this class, all caught on video, that problem identification portion that you just watched. I cannot emphasize enough that you might want to watch that over and over and over again throughout the years, because it really does remind us of the issues that we face as men and what our problems are. And we cannot improve ourselves or fix a problem if we don't acknowledge or know what the problem is. And it's all caught right there for you in color and in video. So please refer to that on a regular basis. All right. So now that we know what the problem is, let's talk a little bit about getting real. Because getting real about our past is also part of the problem. You know, every man has a story. Every man has a wound. You have a history. And, you know, what is your past? What is your history? Are you from a certain ethnic group? Are you from a certain geographical area in the country, on the globe? In your past, do you have disappointments, successes, hopes, dreams, tragedy, fear, pain, destruction maybe, anger, envy? What was your past? What happened to you? Were there fears in your life? You know, everyone knows the story regarding Asian Americans of the silent parents who never tell the kids that they love them, and the kids are just supposed to study hard and go to violin practice. What about the Al Bundy story of a 15-minute high school football fame, but then a disappointing life after that? I've met people in my life where they fell in love with a young woman in high school, and the young woman broke the gentleman's heart, and that devastated the gentleman forever. It made it almost impossible for him to love another woman again, and he stayed single into his 30s, 40s, and 50s. How about ladies? Ladies oftentimes are subject to ridicule about their body composition. Fat, ugly, whatever the teasing is. Maybe you as a man were teased as a young boy, as the ugly kid. I don't know. You had the cheap pants and the cheap tennis shoes, or maybe they called you fat or obese or geek or what have you. But we all have these wounds. Maybe you're the son that could never really get the approval of his father, and everything you've done in your whole life is to obtain the approval of your father. Maybe your parents were divorced, very common, and that devastated you emotionally. You know, we have to talk to one another as men. We have to tell each other our stories. We have to tell each other how we hurt, how we feel, what our opinions are on our past events that have taken place in our lives. And by sharing and bearing your soul to one another, you connect with your brothers. And if you did not know, what happened in your past profoundly affects how you behave in the future. Okay? And so every man has a story. Turning to your handout. Every man has a story, and too many men are controlled or driven by the events in their past. Too many men are driven by the events in their past. Most men have a very difficult time dealing with their hurts, their hopes, their emotions. They call another friend and say, hey buddy, what's going up? Oh, nothing, same old thing. I'm good, work, school, whatever it is. And they don't actually have a real conversation. They quote unquote man up. And they don't talk about what's really going on in their heart, in their heads, in their emotions. They don't talk about that. They never talk about that because they always have it under control. They're always manning up. And they don't ever actually process those issues, talk to anybody else. And in fact, what we do as men, as inefficient and knuckleheads as we are, we stuff it down. Man's natural instinct is to pretend that the wounds are not there, and they just ignore it. They just ignore it. And we just stuff it down. We don't ever talk about it. We don't ever process it. To process your wounds and talk about your history is not manly behavior, is what many men think. It makes you look weak. But every man has wounds, and he holds on to those wounds, and in turn, those wounds hold him as a prisoner. He doesn't process the wounds. He doesn't process the past. He just stuffs it down and mans up. And then that wound never heals. It just sits within him, and it festers, and it grows, and it gets moldy, and it hurts more and more and more. And you can never be your real self because you're being held prisoner by these wounds. And it's just holding you down with chains, and you don't process it, and you can never really get a handle on it. But we cannot be proud. We must humble ourselves before the task. If we are to be real men and get real in touch with our past, we have to humble ourselves and learn and process and deal with our past. We have to acknowledge it. We have to look back. And when we do look back, gentlemen, we have to look back with a balanced approach. There cannot be any blaming involved. You cannot go to the point where, oh, my parents, abandoned me, or that young lady broke my heart, or those kids teased me and called me, dork or fat or whatever it is. And you cannot blame those individuals. You just have to look back, understand the history, your own personal history, and what led you to become who you are today. We have to understand the concept of wounds. The deepest wounds that men experience in life are not their physical wounds. You can break your arm, fall out of a tree and break your arm. Very, very painful. You go to, injure your Achilles heel, your ACL, in a basketball game. And very painful, very hard to deal with. But I assure you, gentlemen, no wound, physical wound that you will ever experience will ever compare to the emotional wound left by a traumatic experience in your past. That's how big our emotional wounds are. They are enormous. They control everything about us. They hold us as prisoner. We can't even move on with our lives until we get a hold of and process these wounds. Instead, we're stuffing them down. We're not dealing with them. We're moving forward in this less than wounded state, almost in a comatose state. We can't ever progress or evolve or improve ourselves because we're held back and prisoner by this historical wound. And it will haunt you for the rest of your life if you don't get a handle on it. We have to understand that man's natural instinct is to pretend that the wound is not there and to suppress it. Women don't have this problem. They go to coffee all the time and they talk all the time with each other. And that's actually very helpful to them to a certain extent, of course. And in that sense, women are very strong at this and men are very weak at this. And so that's why we need a grown man training course, because the strengths and weaknesses of men versus women are different. Women are lovely and they have strengths and weaknesses of a different type, and they should go to Grown Women course and they can get appropriate gender-specific assistance. This is a grown man course. We need to acknowledge that grown men oftentimes suppress their emotional wounds, and we don't deal with them, and we blow up. That's whatever ends up happening. We have to escape these wounds and free ourselves from the weight that holds us down. This will help us move forward, grow, find peace. It will help us evolve and have that happy, fulfilled life that we all want, free of our demons. This is how you find your happiness. This is how you become your authentic self. You get free of the shackles of your old wounds and your demons. On the other hand, if we don't get free from these chains, we're going to blow up. We're going to blow up with our wives, our girlfriends, our kids. We're not going to be happy. We're going to bury ourselves in our work, in our profession, in our professional accomplishments, at the expense of our wives and children and parents and community. We'll be dissatisfied with the choices we made in life. We'll lack real, deep, meaningful relationships with the people we love. Those choices having been driven by our wounds. You know, gentlemen, I want every Lambda Phi Epsilon member to become an evolved man. And an evolved man knows when to pause and look back, trying to understand what in his past has shaped who he is today. What will shape him in the future. If you think about the clothes you wear, the kind of car you drive, the profession that you want to pursue, the type of women that you court, you know, the way you style your hair, the language that you use, it's all motivated by your wounds. It's all motivated by your wounds. So what ends up happening is we have these wounds. We want to heal ourselves from these wounds. We don't actually do the healing. We just stuff the wounds down. And instead we go look for something inauthentic to heal those wounds. Right? Right? I had my heart broken in high school by this woman, this young lady that I fell deeply, deeply in love with. But because it did not work out, not uncommon when you're in high school, it did not work out. I was heartbroken. Oh my gosh, I was heartbroken. And I am, to this day, hurting. This is a hypothetical person I'm talking about, not myself. And in turn, I'm in college, or I'm a young professional. So instead of seeking an intimate relationship of commitment and monogamy with another woman in pure love, instead I go around sleeping with every woman that I can. Do you see how that works? It's the wound that's driving that. Here's another example. Are you the guy who never could really get the attention, adoration, confirmation, and love from your parents? Maybe your father. And so you go to extreme behaviors of accomplishment. You're the best student. You've got the biggest job. You've got the most money. You've slept with the most women. And every time you accomplish these things, you bring it back to your father, showing him what you've accomplished, hoping that he will pat you on the back. But you know what? He never does he? No, he doesn't. Because that's not what's going on. You have a wound and you have to process it. Going to accomplish these things to try to heal the wound is not going to solve the wound. Your father is who he is, and you have to accept that fact, and you have to move on. So whatever it is, we all have this story, and I encourage you all to think deeply in a place of quiet contemplation, to think how your wound and whatever it is, identify it, get real with your past. Then, once you've identified it, think about who you are today, why you do what you do. Why are you the super helpful person amongst your friends? Why are you the selfish person amongst your friends? Why do you treat women the way you do? Why do you treat your family and your parents the way you do? Why is it that you pursue careers of this type versus that type? Why is it that you have to be the best at academics or career? Or why is it that you're always getting bulldozed over by a guy who's more aggressive than you? Why is it that you are like that? It probably has something to do with your wound. So can you see now, gentlemen, how learning more about ourselves helps us learn more about and appreciate others? Because if you understand that you have a personal history and that history disappointed you or makes you feel sad or wounded in some way, and all of your actions today are generated by that history and by that wound, if you understand that about yourself, which very few people do, by the way, if you can understand that about yourself, then you can understand another person. You can understand that good people do bad things all the time because they're wounded. They want to be their true and authentic self. They can't. They're wounded and they're held prisoner by their wounds. And their wounds cause them, because they don't deal with them, they cause them to seek peace and refuge and medication some other way. And so they act odd, awkward. You might call them crazy. You call them whatever you want. But that's probably what's going on. Most people are good at heart, but good people do bad things, usually because they're just very, very misguided. So by doing things like this Lambda Phi Epsilon training, this Life Institute class that we call Lambda Man training, Lambda Phi Epsilon will help open your eyes to this issue. This will support your coming to terms with your own wounds. Even if you don't discover it today, your brothers will stay with you. We're doing this together. We're going through this process together. We will talk to one another about our story, about our past. It will be an ongoing conversation, and that will develop a connection between you and your brother, another man, that you will never have with someone else, because you and your brother will take the time to talk about deep issues, meaningful issues, and you'll never find somebody like that again. And together, arm in arm, the two of you will go through this process of self-exploration, self-improvement, introspection. And by doing it together, you are your brother's keeper. You hold each other accountable. You support one another on your lifelong journeys toward authentic manhood. That's what creates connection. That's real brotherhood. Brotherhood based on a solid foundation. Brotherhood based on a foundation in which you would be proud to show the parent of another pledge. Proud to show an IFC representative standing in this room right now watching me do Lambda Man training for you. You'd be proud of that, not ashamed of other less insightful activities like hazing and binge drinking. Even if you all, because maybe the person attending this course today is young, even if you don't understand or appreciate all of this today, that's okay. Just try to chalk it up in your memory bank. Put it away for safekeeping another day. Because I assure you, gentlemen, there will be a time and a place when there is a reckoning in your life. There will be a reckoning of your soul. And you will come to terms with your own adulthood, your own humanity, and your own purpose or lack of purpose in your life. And everything that you're hearing today will come to fruition. It will all be accelerated, and it will become very, very relevant. And until that time, your brothers in Lambda Phi Epsilon will be dedicated and committed to holding your hand side by side on a long life journey toward authentic manhood. And you may not be ready to deal with this today, but you will have to deal with it tomorrow. And who will have been there with you every day from today until that day comes? It will be your bros. Your bros, the only guys in your life that were cared enough about you to have this conversation, with you and in support of you forever, day in, day out, until you're ready to embrace it. So through ongoing training and support, we will grow together as brothers, supporting one another in addressing our deepest wounds, talking about our wounds, how we will get over these wounds, how each of us individually got over each of our wounds. We can learn from one another, and we can proceed on our journeys hand in hand to be the Lambda man we know that we each can be, living up to your fullest potential, of course. And of course, along the way, we will fall down. We will have setbacks. We will not become grown, mature men overnight. And it's okay to fall down. It's okay to have lapses, so long as we have our brothers there to pick us up. Brothers who know our story, our personal story. They know what makes us tick. They know what pains us. They know where our wounds are, where our junk is. And they know that all men must go through the fire of dealing with their wounds, and they will hold our hand while we each walk through our own fires together. In other words, Lambdas are mature and evolved men, helping other Lambdas become the same. This is our culture. This is the future of our organization, and any organization you ever become part of. This is our formula for success. This is what we're going to build the fraternity on. And I would suggest to you, gentlemen, that as you go through life, there will be few, if any, organizations that will care enough about you to develop programs and services and a culture of authenticity, to actually care enough about you to help you deal with your junk and become a grown, mature man who's going to help the world and improve the world and find your happiness. How many groups in your life will you ever meet like that? There'll be all sorts of clubs that you'll join over the course of your life, but very few of them will ever get into the same depth of analysis and personal introspection that we will here in Lambda Phi Epsilon, because we are brothers. We are family, and this is how we are our brother's keeper. All right, so you have a handout. The handout has blanks, and you have filled in those blanks with the appropriate words. In the handout, there are discussion questions. If you're watching this video alone, I encourage you to sit in quiet contemplation to think about the discussion questions. If, on the other hand, you are in a group setting, I strongly encourage you to have a breakout session now of anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes in groups of 3 or less, so that each of the small groups can discuss the discussion questions, basically discussing the topics that we've discussed in this segment. Okay, thank you, and the next segment will be part 3.